Hi, everybody. This is Chris,
And this is Matt.
and this is Roadwar 2000. Is this a review, Matt?
It's never, ever, ever a review.
No,
That's blasphemy.
no. What is it? Do you want to tell what it is? Do you want me to tell what it is? For people who are joining us for the first time and already I'm sick of these two.
45 seconds in.
45 seconds in. We're done. We're done.
It's a video game book club focused on games over 20 years old.
Right. Reviews tend to tell you what to think. We ask you to play the game with us, and you tell us what you think. It's sort of a anti-review in every way imaginable.
Except that it's exactly like a review.
Because now we're going to tell you what we think.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start. We have more notes for this game than we've had for a game in a long time.
Yeah, we played this sucker a lot. So let's start in 1986.
Jeffrey Johnson's
SSI.
first game.
Yep. And there's not a lot about Jeffrey Johnson. I tried to find some information about what else he's done. I know he did Roadwar Europa, which is the follow-up to this.
Right.
But I couldn't really find much else about him. Did you have any luck?
No, but
But whatever. Good job.
Good job, Jeffrey Johnson.
You did a pretty good job on Road War 2000. So, and man, this is an SSI game. And I was thinking before we started, have we ever hated an SSI game?
No, I was about to say we might not know much about Jeffrey Johnson, but we know a lot about SSI.
I have a theory that if you put me in a room with 1,000 games, I could pick out the SSI games mostly by using the manual.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely by using the manual.
Every SSI game has a very, very similar manual that I love, and they all have the same kind of tone and world building and information and this kind of specific ratio that you can always pick out.
Right. Here's one of the things that I was noticing this time with this. So the gold box games came out after this game. But the manuals still feel like an AD&D second edition Dungeons and Dragons manual. Somehow, even being before that, they have this vibe of
Totally
that sort of presentation. So it's not a big deal. It's something I noticed.
Yeah. Should we start the video? Are you ready?
Yeah, I might be finding a different Jeffrey Johnson. Because he also does games, but he started at Midway. And I think that may be part of our confusion. I will start the video, though.
I see you're playing on the Amiga, but this came out for a lot of different systems, like most of these SSI games. It was DOS, Amiga,
Commodore
Atari,
64.
Commodore. Did it come out for Atari? Yeah, it did.
Yeah. Came out for the Atari ST at very least. I don't think it came out for the 400, 800. If we're wrong, someone let us know in the comments. I didn't find anything for that. We said it came out for the DOS, but did it? Did it come out for the PC?
I looked at screenshots and I was like, I'm getting the Amiga emulator out for this sucker because it looks so much better and it's got a kind of mouse-driven interface at times. It felt right to do it on the Amiga, and I'm really glad I did.
Yeah. The PC/DOS version is easily the worst of your options.
Mm-hmm.
The C64 Apple II type game is fine, and you can tell that it came first, and that a lot of design decisions carried over into this, and we'll talk about those, I'm sure, as we go along. But the graphics on the Commodore look like graphics on the Commodore. You're fine with it.
Mm-hmm.
The PC version, just Google it. It's abysmal. It's silent. It was slapped together. It very much feels like it doesn't feel like care was put into that version when every other one seems to have had care put into it. So
yeah.
What'd you think of the sound on the versions that had sound?
I liked it. I liked the intro music, I think. I liked the it seemed like they did a good job punctuating events with sound.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a tapestry of audio exactly, but
No.
there's little bits where you like when you shoot it goes
Yeah.
it's cool. Like it adds to the game. It's not annoying.
Right.
Overall, I thought the sound was good.
The sound was good. There's not music in the background of the game. There's music at the start. I found the music better on the ST version, but I couldn't find a working ST game. Like once you got into the game, none of the versions I found worked. So
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
that's a
I would be
bummer.
interested in seeing if there's a difference between the Amiga and the ST version. It didn't look much like there was. And like most of these games, the Amiga and ST version came out after the original. So a bunch of improvements that take advantage of the Amiga as well as just gameplay improvements. Not the least of which is when we get back to the main screen, you'll see all your stats along the right side, or at least most of your stats, not all. There's a lot of stats because it's an SSI game.
Right.
But like the
Yeah,
Commodore
game-
couldn't do that. Commodore just didn't do that.
Yeah.
One more thing I want to say about the graphics.
Yeah.
Like the story of this game is you're a road gang in the year 2000 after a pandemic has struck. And
Again,
a pandemic has struck and another country has taken advantage to launch nuclear weapons, transforming the pandemic into mutant, causing people to turn into zombies.
yep.
And the original pandemic was an attack from a small country that wanted to attack the U.S. and so did it biologically, where they had their own antitoxin. And so the premise of the game is you're to go around and find scientists who now know how to treat the new strain of the virus before the enemy does. And
Now-
to complicate all that, because I want to bring this up because it's going to come up in a little bit here, some of the nukes didn't go off. So as you play the games, cities will get destroyed from nukes that finally go off years afterwards.
Yeah.
But these colors, do these colors say zombie hellscape and nuclear Armageddon?
No, not exactly. The little crushed up Volkswagen Beetles they look like everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks nice. Like
It's
it looks nice,
charming.
and then there's occasionally just like Houston has been replaced by a skull and crossbones.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting tone.
Yep.
But whatever. I mean, you work with what you got.
Yeah.
The color palette's not exactly
On
zombie
brand.
apocalypse.
Yeah.
But I think you just said what the plot of the game is. I think one of the more significant things about this game is that you don't know that when you start.
You do.
What you do you really?
You
That
do.
you're
I
supposed-
found it in the book. It's really like, and this is one of the things where I had to go get my box from my shelf because I was trying to read the manual online, and just for some reason reading it in PDF form, I couldn't get into just reading it like a book, but holding it in my hands, I was able to do it. When you start reading those initial journal entries, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is just a history. And so you brush it off and you get to the meat of the thing.
I did read all that though. Cuz SSI they often tuck in little nuggets of advice into those stories. Like I think in Roadwar they put them all at the end because there's another kind of narrative section at the end.
Yeah.
But I definitely in game you don't have any indication of what you're supposed to do when you
Nothing
start.
in game. If you don't have one of these, yeah, no. I need a leader. I hear there's an individual gang leaders who control several cities at once. When a gang leader controls enough cities, I'll send an agent out to relay instructions.
Oh.
I
Well-
finished the game before I found that out. So no shame, man.
No, like I think I did read that, but that doesn't say that you're going to be going and tracking down scientists. That just says you that actually supports what I was going to say. Is that when
If
you
the
start
gang leader
this
is loyal
game,
to our cause, he'll help the scientists to get back here.
oh, okay, touche. But
Should I go on?
the point is that when you start, your directive is to try to take over
Cities.
and control cities.
Yeah. And I didn't know that the first several times I started trying to play the game. And I don't just mean now, I mean years back, over multiple years. Because I never got this game with instructions for some reason. I won't say how I got it. Pirate.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so once I knew what I was supposed to do, it got much better. Learning I could take over cities was, it's not just drive around and shoot up cars, which is fun. But there is an objective.
Right. And the reason I am harping on that is because I think it plays into aspects of this game that I felt were unsuccessful.
Oh, really?
Yes. Because I think this game is not good at balancing carrots and sticks, and I think it's missing a layer of story that it could have easily had, but just doesn't. Because you have no real in-game reason for taking over cities. And it doesn't make your experience any better. It doesn't really feel great. I mean, when you go to the Empire list, it's nice to see a big fat list of cities that you control. And it does cut down on the amount you're attacked because you don't have whoever controls the city.
Yeah.
But you still get attacked all the time. Like, it's not like a break.
I was going to say, I didn't notice from a strictly... Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like your cash situation doesn't get better. Your cache of supplies. Mm-hmm. So the early game in this just feels meandering, and I didn't find that fun.
I will be honest. I think you should not be able to cache supplies without owning the city. I think that would have made owning cities really important and really interesting, and it wouldn't have taken more than another one bit of space. Mm-hmm. Check. Do I own city? Cash or no?
Right. So that part of it, I felt was a failure. The early game in this feels very grindy, and it feels very unfocused.
Well, and let's not get off the cities thing just yet, because when we first started this at the beginning playing, we were talking back and forth. This is one of those games neither of us played, so we got to have that experience of sharing notes and sharing adventures and stuff like that. And you were down in Florida fighting the Greyhounds, and I was trying to take over Fargo, North Dakota. I decided I was just going to sit there and fight guys till I got Fargo. And I just was never happening. And so that was one of the things you and I both had an issue with, too, was taking over a city. You have no idea if you're close, if you're not, if you could go in, fight one battle accidentally, and take over the city. You could fight like I did in Fargo. I literally got my cars all the way up to 15 command, fighting battles just in Fargo, never took over the city.
Right. There's a distinct lack of information for you in kind of the global sense. So how you take over a city, there's two ways you can do it. One, when you arrive, you can send out a scouting party, and that will tell you who it's controlled by, if it's uncontrolled or controlled by, like, I don't know, the
rejoiners, reborners, or something like that.
Yeah, then you can take over the city, and that's easy mode. That's where you're fine. The other way you take over a city is that you go there and start looting over and over again, and then whoever owns it will eventually start attacking you,
Yeah.
or randomly start attacking you. And if you win the question mark number of battles required, then you own the city. And you can see why that's not exactly rewarding, because you don't know if you're close. And then once you do it, really it hasn't gotten you anything but some behind the scenes victory points, so that the guy will come and tell you where to go to start your search for the scientist, which is like the late game.
Well, and here's one of the things I think is probably mildly ironic, possibly in an Alanis Morissette way. And I got this from within my book. There was an SSI newsletter where the developer told how he would play Roadwar, which was huge. To me, that should have been the manual. Like, this is the gameplay loop. Enjoy. And it didn't take anything away. It wasn't like ruining some mysteries for me. It just, it said everything the manual said, but it said it concisely.
Right.
But one of the few little extra bits of information that came in there is the more you loot a city, the lower its victory point value becomes towards your getting contact from the guy. So, like, if you take over a high victory point city, you might be able to take over like 2 or 3 and get contact. Whereas if you're taking over empty ones, that's great, but you're going to have to take over more of them because they're less value.
I thought that was the size of the city, not the quantity that you've looted. I may have misunderstood
the quantity
that.
of looting lowers the value. So its size may have a certain value, but the more you loot it, the more it goes down. So here's the thing. I think this is where my irony part comes in. To fight more battles, you have to loot more often between the battles to A, trigger the event, and B, keep yourself repaired between the fights.
Right.
So the harder it was to take over a city, the more you're just dragging its value down.
Right. So yeah, you go into a city, and then there's a few things you can do, right? You can loot, you can look for people, you can scout it. You can, what else was there? Those are the big ones. Oh, look for vehicles.
Scout, loot. Yeah, people, vehicles, loot.
Yeah. Those are the 3 things you can search for, and then you can also scout the city, but that's kind of a one and done.
Yeah, once you've scouted the city, you know what's going on. The thing I find interesting about looting is I sometimes got people out of it.
Yeah, that is very interesting. So if you search for people, does that lower the victory point score?
I don't know. So that may be one of the reasons why you might want to do one way or the other. It just said the more you loot a city, the lower its victory point goes.
Yeah. Yeah, so early game, and like the layer of storytelling that is missing and that I referenced earlier is, in a lot of these games, you're kind of building a lot of the story in your head. You're telling your own story as you play it, because the game's just not capable of expressing that.
And this is kind of why I pointed out those colors at the beginning, because the game is not only not capable of expressing it because it's 1986, 87, but it's not capable of expressing it like with these colors. The Commodore 64 colors actually do a pretty good job. It's grays and muted greens, and it feels a little dingier. And I know that's part of the Commodore color palette, but it just felt, this is so bright.
It's almost arcadey.
Yeah. I didn't hate it. I had fun, but
right. But yeah, you're totally right. Like, this is not a picture of urban decay.
No.
By any means.
No. Like, all the houses are intact. Like, I want to see some burnt out buildings and shit. The cars are ruined, but the buildings are fine.
Right. Yeah. But the story that I felt like it kind of robbed from me was that I started in Florida.
Uh-huh.
And the story I wanted to have was of my gang taking over all of Florida and like just, tearing it up on the East Coast and like building this empire. But that's not the game.
Not really, no.
The game is doing whatever to get so many victory points and then getting the scientists.
Right. And
And I
doing it on a
feel
time limit.
right, and doing it on a time limit. And I feel like that throws early game into just a soup of essentially nothingness. Like you're only reacting to your immediate situation. And the other problem I had with this game is that your situation is largely random. I didn't feel like I was in charge of my own destiny through my awesome game playing. Like, definitely not.
I
Definitely not.
I will say this. I feel like that's half true. So like we played the first time, and I'm sure you and I both had really rough starts.
Mm-hmm.
This video that I'm pulling up now is after I've beaten the game. I played the whole game and realized I hadn't recorded. I just had so much fun playing. I just powered through, and then they're like, oh, I got to go back and play an hour and get some video. My start was much easier. And I didn't start somewhere, really great. I knew what I was doing. I'm like, okay, I need to find vehicles, not even bothering with a motorcycle. Don't let my people get above a certain thing. And kind of knew how to like look around for things and search cities and get stuff moving. And I got off the ground way faster. I think this game does a great job of, there's a layer of random that you have. You're right. You have absolutely no control over, and you can get screwed. Like, I would hate to start in Florida because those Greyhounders with buses, that's brutal. Mm-hmm. Fighting a bus is tough. But starting in like Texas, where you're surrounded by oil fields and stuff, that's going to be a very different start.
Right.
In fact, I think it would have been really interesting to let you pick your starting position.
Yes. Yeah, that would have been interesting, because then you could start by your hometown or,
right,
someplace you have a connection with.
Right. Rather than randomly throwing you in. And the other thing, too, is it could have things like, start here if you're new to the game, because it's going to be easier. Start here if you think you're tough shit, because I'm going to curb stomp you until you can't take it anymore. And something as simple as just letting you pick the starting city. I think there was an element still back at this time where, I am a defender of games weren't necessarily hard on you to be hard on you. Mm-hmm. But I also think there's an element of some developers were like, no, eat it. This is a game. You're going to have some random challenges thrown at you, and maybe it'll go well and maybe it won't. They were okay with that when even then it wasn't a necessary thing to make the game interesting.
Well, get out your latte and your blankets, because I'm going to disagree with you and bitch a little bit.
Got my latte.
Very good.
Got a hoodie. I'll settle a hoodie. Here, tell you what.
Yeah, my 80s survival blanket is in the other room, but I would like to have it. You are very right that once you understand what you're doing with this game, you can make a better world for yourself in early game.
Mm-hmm.
That is true, but still, you can have the experience where you've made the right decisions. You've built up your reserves. You've done everything. You're in good shape. And then the game can take it away from you in like 3 turns. That happens in this game. And that's okay, because it's the 80s and that's just how games worked. But if you're doing the tactical combat, that tactical combat can take half an hour, 40 minutes. A large tactical combat is not unusual to go like 20 to 30 minutes.
If you do it tactical, yes.
If you do it tactical, which I would recommend because I think it's fantastic. But my point is to do a 30-minute combat and then have your remaining resources stripped from you like the next 2 turns before you can rebuild, and then you lost, and all the safe scumming in the world's not going to help you.
Well, no, so safe scumming
That's
would
tough.
help you. Like if you loaded back to the beginning of that battle and like just didn't
But
do
if
it.
you win the combat and you score like a sweet bus and a sweet flatbed, you don't want to save scum back to the beginning of that combat.
Well, then
You
you
want to
are
have
better off
that.
than you were. Otherwise, you'd want to safe scum back to the beginning of that
But then if
combat.
mutants attack you and kill you, it doesn't matter.
The
So
disease is rough. We should kind of mention that too. So there's a chance. We do talk about this mutant disease, and there's medicine which helps heal your guys after a fight, and then there's antitoxin, which is just if you guys catch the virus, you need antitoxin.
yep, and you get it by trading from healers in certain towns.
So you get it from trading from healers in certain parts. I don't know. Like I sent you to a place where I thought there were set healers because I always found them there, but I can't guarantee that that is actually set healers. Some cities have set events when you go there the first time you go in. And if you know the layout of the United States, those events will make sense. If you go to Disney World or Disneyland, there's a amusement park there that your guys can ride on with a random event. Maybe their morale will go up because they got to go on all the rides. Maybe the rides are old and broken and some of them die.
Right.
Or if you go
I
to,
still let them do it.
I still let them do
every
it too.
time.
Why
They
not?
need that.
Go to Las Vegas to play in the casinos. Sometimes they win money, sometimes they lose money. Go to Minneapolis for the Mayo Clinic. Get a doctor for your gang. Like
Go
there are
to New York and get a politician.
go to or Washington D.C.
Yeah.
If you go to places where you know the country, you will be rewarded for that knowledge of the country, which I think is kind of cool. One of the things I found in this playthrough, though, remember what I said about nuke bombs? They will take away cities with those set encounters. Like Austin got taken out this time for me, and I was going there to get something. I'm like, well, I guess my people don't have that. And I will say there are 3 cities that are super important, or at least 3 things that are super important. One is a random, and that's snow tires. It's not in a city. You just have to find them in a store somewhere. And then you outfit your guys with snow tires, and you have snow tires until you run out of tires. Then there's the food and the fuel, which lowers your food and fuel consumption by half. Holy crap.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. I'm not going to say where they are in case someone wants to play this game and find it for themselves, but it is a huge deal. I will say one of my complaints about that, though, the food thing doesn't make sense to me for 2 reasons. One, it's not where I would put the food thing. And it's really close to the fuel thing.
Yeah. Right. That's kind of a very profitable run to make.
You want to go hit those 2 cities, boom, boom, and now you're in just infinitely better shape for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
But I think that's cool that you can sit there and go, I want to, I know where stuff is, so when I do my playthrough, I'm going to do a loop. I'm going to do
Right. And it's fun to pull the map out and plan where you're going to go. And again, like I feel like I'm harping on this game a lot, but I really liked it. Like it
Right.
was super fun. And I was really happy the whole time I was playing it. And I wasted way more time on it than I anticipated because I was like, I want to keep going. I want to play it.
Well, we haven't gotten to the tactical combat yet, which is where I think we're going to talk the most fun. But let's stay still in the overall game for a little bit.
The world exploration.
Yeah.
So anyway, part of what I felt about the early game was that I don't think they did a good enough job forcing you to explore, and so when it comes time to take out that map and like plan a route, I was mostly planning to go places that I just felt like I wanted to see, or I wanted to drive through and see what was up with the oil fields and stuff like that. Because there's nothing really to force you out unless you're desperately seeking antitoxin. That was really the only time that I was like, I gotta move, I gotta get out of here. Um, but again, that can be a fruitless
Well,
endeavor.
and I will say some places have more mutants than others. That is one thing I've noticed. Like if you're on the coast, the mutants are much higher than in the central states. Yeah, I do feel like there wasn't, like if you started up the game and you didn't start in or near one of those initial cities that has like a surprise jackpot in it, you might not know those exist. You know what I mean?
Right.
And even if you find one, you're like, oh, that's clever. They did that at this city. Until you find your like second and third one, you're like, wait a minute. I need to go to every city. I need to
But the
find
thing is,
all the stuff.
you really don't need to go to every city.
I'm going to
Unless-
disagree. Well, maybe not every city, but if you're not going to look up what cities you need to go to, you'll need to go to every city to know what cities you need to go to. Right.
Explain that. I'm sorry.
So let's say, let's give another example. Indianapolis 500. You go to Indianapolis, you get a speed boost to your cars. You don't really know if there's anything there if you don't go to the city.
Oh, right.
So once
Right.
you know the cities you need to go to, no, you don't need to go to every city. But until you do, you need to go to every city.
Right. If you're driven by those Easter eggs, they're not really Easter eggs.
Oh no,
Those,
I was
like-
going to say, so towards the end of my game, my tactical combat broke. I couldn't use it anymore. It would start loading in cars and it would stall out. And I let it sit for about 5 minutes and then I was like, I don't know what's going on. So I switched to abstract combat. And because of all the bonuses and everything I had, my abstract combat, in addition to being faster, just performed 100 times better. Like I never lost a car. I rarely lost guys. Where I knew if I did tactical combat, in addition to taking longer, I would have lost some stuff.
Right.
But getting your speed up on your cars, getting your armor up on your cars, and you can do that multiple times at multiple places.
Yeah, but it is not necessary.
It's technically not necessary, but man, it
It makes a huge difference.
makes a huge difference.
You're absolutely right there.
Yeah.
But that is kind of the main reason why you branch out, because the mechanics of managing your stuff, like you go into a city and like you said, you loot, and I love that when you loot it tells you what kind of store you found, and then the stuff that you get matches that store. Like that's a really great little thing, because you're like, I want to loot a supermarket because I need food. Like that's great, but you can do it indefinitely, and there's nothing to stop you from taking over a city and just staying there and looting and looting and looting.
Another thing that might have worked is if your command points for number of vehicles wasn't tied to how many victories you won, but how many cities you owned.
Right. That would have been better, because then you would want to take over more and more cities, or like, yeah,
That would have
would've
pushed you
been-
out.
But as it stands, you do need to move out, and I think as frustrating as it is to not be able to find antitoxin, those moments where I was like, I'm infected, I've got like 1,000 guys, and I have like 20 antitoxin or like 5 antitoxin, it's not enough. Those were kind of exciting moments where I wanted to solve that problem and set out. But the issue is that I just set out randomly and hoped for the best.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel like I was in charge of if I got it.
The
know what I mean?
antitoxin thing is really... It's interesting on paper. It's interesting on paper. It's not fun because there's no way I can solve it by being smart.
Right. Right, you're not rolling into the city on fumes, and scoring the antitoxin at the last minute and saving yourself. You're just like, you either find it or you don't,
Yeah.
and then your guys are just slowly dwindling and
Hmm.
dwindling, and like you can try to keep up with what you're losing by looting more and more, but like it's not like it rolls out and no one's infected anymore.
Right. And while antitoxin doesn't take up space in your inventory, let's talk about inventory here in a second. While antitoxin doesn't take up space in your inventory, medicine does. The only way to get antitoxin is to trade for medicine.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, the inventory system is kind of cool, but also there were times that it really pissed me off in
Hmm.
a big way.
Yep.
So you can carry a quantity of stuff that's dependent on the types and number of vehicles that you have, because you're
Yes.
storing all the shit in your buses and your flatbeds, whatever.
Same with crew size. All
Right.
your
Same with crew
inventory is
size.
based on what vehicles and how many of them you have. So if you've got a fleet of 12 motorcycles, you're carrying like 50 food and maybe 12 to 24 guys tops. And
Right.
that's if some of your motorcycles have sidecars. And you got to
Yeah.
carry your fuel, your medicine, your spare tires, and your food.
Yep.
Did I miss anything?
Uh,
No, I
Food,
think that's it.
medicine, tires, fuel. I think those are the main ones.
Okay.
And so what was I saying?
We were talking
Uh,
about space and how it varies by
okay,
car. Yeah.
right. And then you can cache 250 of each thing in a city, or is it in any square? Or is it in a city? I think it's just in a
Just
city.
in cities. You cannot cache on the road.
But you can loot on the road, correct?
Yes. And so
Right.
if you can't carry enough, oh, we should talk about that too. If you
That's
can't
where I'm
carry
going.
enough, continue then.
So what happens once you're full of supplies and once your cache is full if you're in a city, then you just drop it. And that's not great. That's really, really frustrating. Uh, and you could say, well, it's kind of your fault because you didn't plan. But the problem is you get supplies that sometimes you desperately, desperately need from winning these combats. But if you lost too many cars in the combat, you have to just leave your shit. You have to leave all those supplies that you got because you didn't score any new cars and you lost maybe a bus. And
Yeah.
that is so annoying when you're like, I desperately need food. Please, like, let me get some food from this combat. And then you get it. And you're like, oh, thank God. Like 3,000 food, I'm golden. And then you have to like drop it all on the ground.
Well, and
And
here's
because
the
there's no way to rearrange your inventory.
right. I was going to say, here's my thing. I've had times where I'm running out of food and fuel. And I'm traveling down the road and I take out a road gang, which seems to be one of the best ways to get food and fuel. Because sometimes it'll be like, here's 2,000 food, here's
So much,
4,000
yep.
fuel. So, like, all you'll ever need, more than you can carry. But I can't say, okay, I've got 2,000 space, you've got 3,000 food, give me 1,000 food and 1,000 fuel. No, it's like, do you want to take 4,000 food? If I say no, I get none of it. If I say yes, it fills up my inventory. And when I get to the fuel,
You can't
I have no
it.
space for fuel. No
Yep.
space for fuel. And you don't know if you're going to get fuel. So if you turn down that food,
Right. Right. That is incredibly frustrating because early game is all about getting that shit to keep your people alive and keep your caravan moving.
and this is one of the things where I'm going to say this is definitely like I think the Amiga could have done it better. I don't think the Commodore could. So this is one of those situations where you got to look at it came from the Commodore. This was the way the interface happened. The extra stuff we get here is actually an improvement, but that underlying game is still that underlying game.
Yeah.
So I give it an ounce of slack. And I think, as I'm saying that, I think the reason we're griping is because we liked it. It's
That
so
is
close.
100% true.
It's
Yep.
so close.
Right. You
This
feel
isn't an
those
auto duel.
things. Right. You feel those limitations because you want that stuff so bad because you really like the game. That's why it is extra frustrating. Those little game elements that just kind of kick you in the balls because the game is so much fun.
Right.
And you're like, oh,
You're so
please
close.
give me the fuel. We also didn't talk about ammo. You're also toting around ammo, but it doesn't take up space in your inventory.
Ammo doesn't take up space in your inventory. I have been surprised how fast I go through ammo sometimes, though.
Yes. Oh, and guns. We haven't talked about
guns. Guns also take up space in your inventory.
Yeah.
I found a bug with guns that I thought was interesting. If you go over 1,000 guns, it doesn't recognize the thousands column.
Oh.
So I had people using crossbows, even though I had 4,000 guns.
Really? Wow.
So I had to drop my guns under. I just had a hunch. I'm like, it seems odd that I've got a small over here. I've got 4,000 and like 82, and everybody's using crossbows. I'm like, I wonder. And I dialed it back to under 1,000 to about 800 guns. Everybody had guns again.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
We'll have to talk about that in combat. You might not have if you didn't overpack guns. You really shouldn't be carrying around 4,000 guns because they take up inventory. So,
right,
shame on me. But at that time, I think I had 5 buses. Like, it was a great place to be in.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have too many guns in Road War.
I got too many guns in the post-apocalypse.
I will. There were 2 other overworld gameplay mechanics that I didn't really care for.
Okay.
Because I think we're going to start moving into combat here.
Yes, very soon. We're starting to brush up against that.
Yeah. So you loot these cities, you get a random thing, and then you're managing that inventory, which we've talked about. Mm-hmm. And then you can also scout a city where you send out your troops, and your troops are of what, 6 types?
Yeah, A, B, C, D, E. No, just 5. There's no
5
Fs.
types.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the A's are the best,
mm-hmm.
and the E's are the worst.
Yep.
And it stands for stuff, but I'm not going to say them.
Armsman, Bodyguard, Commando, Dragoon, and Escort.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so when you're scouting a city, you send them out.
Mm-hmm.
And that mechanic is, I think, broken.
Yes.
Because the only thing to do there, because you're not going to get anything from doing it except you're going to find out if you can take the city over.
Mm-hmm.
You get nothing out of it. So you only want to send out the absolute minimum number of dudes to do it. Because you can just like lose a ton of people and there's nothing you can do about it.
Right.
And it seems to be random, and it doesn't seem to be tied to how many people you find out. And if you do, and if it is, who cares? Because you, like,
right,
you don't really get anything from doing it. It would be better to send out 1 escort 1,000 times than it would be to send out 500.
So here's what
armsmen.
I've kind of figured out from lots of doing it. And maybe your stuff was different, so maybe I'm full of shit. The better quality person you send out, the more likely they are to survive. And each person you send out has a chance of figuring out who's in the town.
Mm-hmm.
And after so many people, the odds on them getting caught and dying goes up. Because it says, how many armsmen do you want to send out? How many bodyguards do you want to send out? Blah, 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 down the list. So I've found that if you send about 20 people out, that's the sweet spot. I never send out armsmen because they're too valuable to risk. Mm-hmm. Bodyguards if I have to. But I'll send out like 5 commandos, 10 dragoons, 10 escorts, somewhere in there. And I'll lose a bunch of the escorts, like whatever. I'll get you at the next people loot. Mm-hmm. We should talk about how we recruit people too, but
yeah, that's the other half of this.
Yeah, so that seems to always work with maybe losing like 5 people of those 25, which is not a great ratio, but when they're escorts, I don't care.
My approach was slightly different.
Okay.
I would send out like one or two armsmen, depending on where you are in the game. Like if you're just at the beginning,
Yeah.
you're gonna send out like
At
one.
the end, I
two.
had to send out armsmen. I had 150 of them.
Yeah, right. You end up with a lot, but like kind of in the middle, my approach would be to send like one of each or two of each until it said one won't be coming back. Then you stop. Then you don't send anyone else
Okay.
out, and then you go, and then usually it goes fine. And if it doesn't, you repeat it. And because you're only sending out 5 guys, it you're still like doing okay. You're just
Yeah.
retrying the roll basically.
That makes sense. That's not a bad way. I'll have to try that next time. Because
Yeah,
I
but
probably
it's
will
kind
play
of
this game again.
Yeah, me too.
One of the things I can say is like the first time we played it, it took weeks. If I wanted to right now sit down and power through this, 3-4 hours, I could probably finish the game.
Yeah, it's not super long. Once you know where you're trying to go and what you're trying to get, it's pretty focused.
And it's fun to get there. I mean, we've
Yeah.
been talking about the sort of layout of it and the game world part of it, but we're going to get now more into the meat of the game. And that's where it's fun. The game loop itself is fun.
Yeah. Yeah, once you find out what you're trying to do, then it becomes like, okay, now I'm focused. Now I'm going to go to the place, do the thing, do the thing, do the thing, and keep my guys alive and like and you're like
Yeah.
you're more focused. In the
You have a
beginning
direction.
you're just kind of wandering around at the whim of the game mechanics, and that's less fun,
Right.
but still fun.
Still
I
fun.
really enjoyed that part. Yeah.
Like, yeah, we're ditching on it, but okay. So now let's say we talk about recruiting because we talked about losing people. We're talking about getting some more people here. When you're in a city, you search for people. You hit P. And, you might not find anybody, or eventually you will, and it'll say there's some people eyeing you from a distance, and you can wait. You can leave. You can send envoys, or you can fire a volley
Fire.
at them.
Yep.
I'm sure firing a volley does something, but I don't know what.
I never did. Well, I tried waiting, which you should never do, in my opinion.
No.
There's nothing good ever happens when you wait. Like the best thing that happens is you get the
They
people,
wait too. Yeah.
but usually what happens is they just kill a bunch of your people.
Yeah. They shoot.
So the answer is to, at least when I played, I shouldn't say this is the answer, but my answer was to always send envoys.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where there's some nuance in how many guys you send,
Yes.
because they can all die, which is terrible when it happens.
Like that.
Because,
Not in a fight. Just
no,
dead.
but there is a fight after.
Yes,
always.
always.
So you're like, I'm gonna send 100 guys, and I'm gonna like get all these people because they're gonna see how badass I am. And then they're like, oh no, they all died.
Yeah.
And by the way, you overextended yourself, and now we're gonna attack you. And that is one of those times that this game can just take everything that you have.
I have found the magic number is between 20 and 30 people.
Mm-hmm.
If you can send 20 to 30 envoys, they will rarely, if ever, kill them outright. Because it'll say, they've killed your envoys, and then you start shooting back and forth.
And they kill more.
Yeah. And they kill
Yeah.
more of your guys. So that's your floor, and it's going to go up from there.
And also, politicians are hugely useful when it comes to envoys, because more often than not, if you have politicians, they just join.
Yeah.
Like you don't even have to deal with sending an envoy.
That was huge to me when I got a politician. I was like, oh, that's what they do. Holy crap.
It makes the game way, way easier.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff you find when you're going around, like the doctor to keep more guys alive and do medicines, the politician to do that, the drill sergeant to level people up faster. Huge. Armsmen are no joke if you've got a bunch of those guys on a bus.
And the other thing about the looting that I didn't like, the first thing I didn't like is that you can do it indefinitely with no repercussions in a city. The other thing I didn't like about looting is that, or not looting, but recruiting, is you just sometimes get the best guys from you don't
Yeah.
have to build them up all the time.
Right.
uh and I get that because they're good. There's going to be good
A
people
mix.
wandering around.
Yeah.
Like, this is Mad Max world. Like, of
Hmm.
course there's going to be armsmen out there, but it also can sometimes feel like the balance is broken because it doesn't real you don't really feel like, I worked these guys up from nothing. I'm going to cherish my armsmen and put them on my best vehicles and blah
Right.
blah blah, because maybe I'll just recruit 20
Recruit
more
some
of
more.
them next time. Like, it doesn't feel like a scarce resource, and it really should, because it does make a big difference
Yeah.
how good your guys are.
Right. I was just wondering, like, would it make sense to have that also be tied into your command? Like, you can only recruit people up to a certain level because guys who are better than that wouldn't be interested in you. And I'm like, man, that would make that early game brutal.
It would
I mean,
be,
it makes
yeah.
sense. They'd have to scale the early game too. Like, a bunch of other people are still getting started too. Like, all the gangs are getting started. But they have some established gangs, like the Greyhounds and the Mother Truckers. It's
Yeah.
my favorite
Fuck-
gang name,
fuck
by the way.
Greyhounds. Yeah, mine too. Totally. What was your gang name? Sector 192?
Sector 192.
I love it. Mine was the Trebeckians.
The
In honor of
Trebeckians.
Alex Trebek.
Fantastic.
I started in Canada, and I was like, well, I love Alex Trebek. So,
Yeah. Okay.
so I think that's all the Overland World mechanics.
That's
right?
all the Overland World mechanics. The only other thing I want to say before we get into combat is an opportunity for combat that was missed. That is, we talk about these gunfights we have, and it sounds like, oh, so you got like a tactical gunfight where you move guys around in groups of people. No. Your team fires, you kill this many people. Their team fires, they kill this many people. And repeat until one of you runs out of people. And that's it. And you watch. You have no, like, oh, let's flee. These many people get away. No, it's just.
The other thing I really don't like about that is that you have, like, you get a sense for how you're doing, but I wish that it gave you a total. I wish it updated a total somewhere so you could find out how you're doing. Because if you were on the ground in that combat, clearly you would know how many people about they have. And
Right.
You would know how many people about you have. So it's really unrewarding to watch those scroll by for sometimes really long periods of time when you've got tons and tons of dudes.
Let's use that as a segue in that you don't know how many people are attacking or getting attacked in your, like, melee fight, in your gunfight.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get into a tactical combat, you can't look at the car to see how many people they have on, or even a hunch is how many people they have on. So you don't know, should I be like trying to peel off a bunch of guys off this car, or do they have two left and I should be focused on the bus? You're not given information to make tactical decisions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a do your best with it kind of attitude, which I don't like as much. I think we're going to start talking about combat, right?
Yeah. Oh, here's
So the first thing about combat is there's 8,000 different ways to do it in Roadwar. You can do abstract or tactical.
Okay.
Yeah. Here, are you going to do it? Okay, so you can do abstract or tactical, and abstract will be where it just does it, right?
So there's abstract, tactical, and quick combat. It offers you first
quick combat
abstract. Yeah.
Is a sub tactical.
Is a sub tactical, right? So abstract is just, it is literally very. We think you would destroy this car. We think you would destroy this car, or we think they would destroy this car.
It's basically like the on foot gunfights, but with cars.
Right, and I'll show you how those go. My experience has been, if you have a decent crew, abstract is almost the way you should go if you're trying to win. Just because I had almost no bad experiences with abstract.
Right. Abstract, you seem to win more often, and maybe that's because I suck at tactical. But the problem is that you can't take over vehicles or anything with abstract
Right.
combat. So if you're like in a position where you want to increase your vehicles, you know what you want, you hope you're going to fight it because you don't know.
Right.
Then you shouldn't use abstract. But by and large, abstract is a good way if you're like me and you're like, I need antitoxin. That's what I'm doing now. I don't want to screw around with a 30-minute combat.
Only because I'm going to lose everybody in 3 seconds and end the game anyway. Let's just
right, exactly.
So 2 things on the abstract, and maybe you're not good at tactical. Was quick combat better for you than tactical?
I hated quick combat.
Yeah, quick combat was never better for anyone. So I don't think you're bad at tactical, because it is definitely abstract is the easiest. Tactical gives you the control to be pretty good. Quick combat, I don't know what they're doing. You supposedly have some like numbers we'll show you later you can mess with, but it never worked out for me. But remember what I said earlier about sometimes like games from the 80s did seem like they had this hard mode, like it just randomly threw you in a world. Mm-hmm. I remember a couple of years ago people talking about, should you be allowed to skip combat in video games? Is it still a game if you skip combat? Yeah. This is the 80s. This is latte blanket weather. You can skip combat. Mm-hmm. This is when it was hard. And SSI was not known as a easy cream puff company of fluffy teddy bear games. Mm-hmm. These were dedicated wargamer games. You can skip combat. You have to like manage and prepare for it, but you don't have to spend 45 minutes moving your cars around the map to play the game.
But you definitely should sometimes, because it is
fun.
Super fun, which we will show you now.
Super fun. It is the most fun part of the game. Anyway.
Yeah, it is a good time. So you have abstract and tactical. So you're going to choose tactical. And now you can auto-deploy or not. And my advice is to always, always, always auto-deploy, because the interface to deploy or move around your men, it's sexist game, by the way. It's everyone is men. There's no women in this game at all. The interface to move them around is terrible. And this is, I think, where you were talking about the Commodore being the genesis for this version, because it feels like a real Commodore kind of. Mm-hmm.
So here it's showing you what you got and, you know, how much crew you have in each of the stacks of A, B, C, D, E. Like, there's enough space here. It could have spelled out armsmen, this many, this many, this. You know what I mean? It could have done it. Mm-hmm. And let you know if you have more crew that haven't been put on anything yet. Obviously, you auto-deployed.
You shouldn't have any unassigned crew.
Here's the interface you're talking about.
So here we fucking are in the vehicle deployment screen. If you've got 10 vehicles, you're going to go through this 10 times. And you can see it's kind of a mess. Mm-hmm. So instead of talking about what everything is, this is the workflow. If you wanted to move one of your commandos from the interior to the top side.
Yep.
You would make sure your interior is the area.
Yep.
You would make sure that your current man type is commando, and then you would subtract it. And then you would change your area, and then I don't think you have to change the man type. And then you would add it. And to do that in mass with all these different types of guys is really, really annoying.
Right. So, and that's that part. Let's say you don't have enough guns yet. You have to pick whether you have, each car can fire 2 volleys a turn if there's things in its range. Mm-hmm. Do you want your first volley to be guns or crossbows? It usually defaults to guns or crossbows. But you might want to pull, like, if you got guys on a motorcycle, you might be like, look, I don't even think you're going to hit anything. You get crossbows. I want to put all my guns on the bus. Or you might be like, no, all you have, I need to keep you at range, so I want you to have guns. There's theoretically this tactical, interesting thing you can decide here, but really what you want to do is get at everybody guns.
Yep. That's the goal.
So it doesn't,
Guns are F.
kind of doesn't
Firearms.
matter, because pretty quick you'll have enough guns for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do, like you said, you do that for each vehicle.
Yep.
And now here's the other fun part. You haven't seen what the enemy's fielding yet. Now you do. So you decide all your layout, all your people, all your everything on what your tactics are going to be before you know what you're up against.
Right. Which is very frustrating. And it's not like there's an option to run from combat either. So it doesn't really matter. Like you're screwed, but like th- you could you could make an argument that I would like to lay my bus out with more armsmen if they have something I want to take out. Or like I would
Yes.
distribute more guys to like something that has good boarding, like a pickup truck or a van.
Or like, oh, they have, nothing but small cars. So what I'm going to do is pull everybody off my bus and leave it in back so it's not risked.
Right.
And put everything on the cars I don't care about.
Right. Shoot out the tires, be done in 5 minutes,
Yeah.
So you're making all these tactical decisions kind of in the dark. And the other thing that would be really nice is if it saved your tactical decisions.
Oh, that's too far. Oh,
Yeah. Okay. So
Hang on.
now we've gone through two layers of decisions. Now they deploy, and now you get to decide: do you want to use quick combat?
Right. So
I
quick
don't think
combat's
you
like
do.
abstract, but it uses all the decisions you just made.
Yeah. So you can say, I want to ram this ratio of vehicle. I want to focus my firing on the tires, the interior, the top side, and then it'll run the combat for you.
Right.
And it sucks, and it's not like abstract is way better, I thought, than quick combat.
Right. I 100% agree. Because if you're going to give up control of the game anyway, like if you're going to let it handle combat, the only sort of bonus I'll give quick combat is it's more narrative. It's like this vehicle shoots at this vehicle and does this much. This vehicle, like it does every turn without a map.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. Like you can see who you're ramming. It seems to be really rammy no matter what you do.
And I just blew past this. I went too fast, but it asks you to do a generated map versus a standard one. I don't know what that means.
I tried to enumerate the differences between those and could not.
Yeah, I can't either. All right.
The short version is that there's two combat maps. One is when you're on the highway, it's like an 8-lane divided highway. The other is in a city where it's these big city blocks, and the wrecked out cars are kind of randomly placed.
Yeah. There's some difference to how the streets are placed too, but
Yeah.
more not on the highway, just in the city.
Yeah.
And
I
then,
liked the highway combat. Like it's way easier and it's way faster.
Right.
But this has its charms too.
This has its charms too because you're darting around corners and stuff. But in terms of just getting in there and having a good old fashioned Mad Max shoot 'em up thing, yeah, the highway is way better. So now it's time to start combat, and they just take your cars and scatter them across the map.
Right. There are rules about where your cars can be placed. Oh, and by the way, you have no idea where the enemy's going to be when you do this.
Right, much like just before. So now it's going to ask you, put your cars where you want them. Then we get to. I don't know where I want them. I don't know.
But they have to be in X12 and X19, I believe.
Yeah, you can't go too far forward. I've never tried to go too far back, but I guess that's a possibility too, isn't it?
I think it is. I think it is a thing. So you can like have some kind of high level strategy, I guess. Like I usually put anything I'm going to ram within the front. Anything if I feel like I'm going to board, I put the stuff I'm going to board within the front, and my little cars in the back because they're fragile and they're kind of zippy and they can, they can get there.
Yeah. So when I had bigger teams, when I was running like 15 cars, which was overkill, I would put my buses center front and a little ahead. And then my little cars, I'd actually put like on side streets 2 or 3 down. So that what they would do is they'd get out there first, and the enemy would see them zipping by and like pull off, and then all my buses would come down on some poor schmuck. And
that's great.
then turn and destroy something else, and it was fun. It's a fun way to just destroy people. So
yeah, this combat is pretty great. With a few minor things I didn't like.
I was going to say, and the thing is, like, both of us talked about this, and if we were doing it on a modern computer with modern power, there's things we'd add. But for a 1986, 1987 game, oh my God, I don't think you and I would have ever stopped playing this.
No, this combat is, and like, auto duel. So the auto duel combat, like
take your drink.
Yeah. I know. I was hoping we didn't end up talking about.
Oh, we have to, because reason you know why this game is here is because of Auto Duel. Every year, I pick one car war game just to try and find a good one.
I think this is a good one.
I think we did. I think we found one.
If you think of the arcadey combat in Auto Duel, it's so unsatisfying. It's not fun. It doesn't feel like you're really doing anything. This is great compared to that, because you feel like when you do something stupid, you feel like you did something stupid.
You did it, yeah.
And when you execute a plan perfectly, it's because you did it. Like you thought it out, you did it the right way, and that feels really good. Whereas with Auto Duel, you're just kind of like joysticking around slowly.
What I like in this is you'll see down at the bottom, there's like a speed, and the AC is acceleration, the B is braking, and the M is maneuverability. So maneuverability is how far you can turn in that round. Acceleration is how much faster you can get your car going. Braking is how much you can slow down. And I'm sure you've had this happen too, but you've been like going into like a tight area where you think you're going to have to snake through, and you suddenly find you can't brake in time.
Yes. That is a lot of combat. Is managing that.
Managing your speed actually matters, and it's fun. And when I can't brake in time, there's part of me that's like, oh shit, and there's part of me that's just laughing inside like a giddy little kid, because it's so funny just thinking about some guy on the bus going, shit.
Right. Like I doubled down on speed and didn't keep track of it.
Yep. That's on me, like, but it's funny.
in our defense, though, like you don't feel the speed in the combat. You have no real sense other than that number that you're chugging along at 80 miles an hour down this like side street, straight at a wrecked out car.
Yeah.
But that is a definite thing that happens, that you crash your own car because you didn't pay attention to how fast you were going.
Yep. And that's where I would have loved to see stuff like oil slicks or skids or other things sort of added in. That's what we were talking about. Like a modern game, like some of these wrecked out cars would have had oil on the road, where it just screws your braking if you go through it. Your braking detriments for so many turns until the oil wears off, or something like that. Or handling or maneuverability or whatever. There's a ton extra fun things that if someone was making this again today, they could add in and really make it just that much better. But I still had a good time with this.
Yeah. So you end up with a couple turn phases. There's the movement phase, and that happens like twice, I think, for every car, right?
Yeah. Well, no, it depends on your speed.
Oh, right.
So if you're doing like 50, 60, you might get 3-4 moves in your movement phase.
Yeah. So you move everyone, and then the other player moves, the bad guys move, and then you go into the fire phase.
Yes.
And you can fire in the directions, front, back, left, right, and you can. It's cool because if you use the arrow keys, it'll show you what you can see. But I never did that because it's way faster to just type FB, front, back, left, right, FBLR, and just like hope that one of them works. So I liked that mechanic, that there is line of sight. but I didn't use the tools that the game provided to do it.
No, I didn't either. The first time I saw it, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I'm like, well, wait, why do I care? Like,
Yeah, I'll just try.
I'll just try. It takes me no less time to try. And you can only fire from 2 directions at a time. So, like, you can't split left and right and front. And depending on the vehicle, each direction can only bring so many guns to bear.
Right. So get out your manual, find that table, because you're going to need it.
Yep. And but I mean, also at the same time, logic will dictate. You do not shoot out the front of a bus the same number of guns as you shoot out the side of a bus. So
what a time it is when you shoot out the side of a bus with like 70 guns or whatever, like 40 guns. It's wonderful.
Well, yeah, because you've got guys inside the vehicle and on top. So you've got just this sea of this broadside of guys with guns shooting off a bus. It's like, especially when it's some poor little motorcycle guy, you just picture him just, RoboCop, beginning of RoboCop, just gone.
Yep. And that's the other thing, though, about combat is I think the large vehicles are overpowered.
They are.
In combat. I love a good van boarding or flatbed or like pickup boarding. Like that's wonderful. But really where it's at is buses and semis and flatbeds because they have stronger frames. You can ram with them. They have so many guys that they're not really going to get destroyed. They have so many wheels, so it's hard to shoot out the tires.
Right.
So, you really want those big vehicles. That's how you're going to expand your party. That's how you're going to be successful in combat. And again, there's no gate on them. There's no grinding for them. You just randomly get them. And that's one of my big beefs with this game is the randomness. I think
what would have balanced them out, and we were kind of talking about this after we got done playing it, food needs to go away. We've often lamented food in games. Done right, it's great. This is one of those where you run out of food, people start dying. Run out of people, game over. Mm-hmm. And since you can't deliberately get food, it's randomly given to you. It's extra annoying.
Mm-hmm.
If you had replaced food with parts as a sort of money, and you need parts and you spend them to repair your vehicles rather than just every so often in a city, all your vehicles get repaired.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly the big vehicles have a cost.
Right.
Keeping up the repairs on more armor and more structure and more tires. Okay, well now do I want a bus? Like that's a commitment to my, expenditures here. And
like fuel's definitely a thing with the bigger vehicles. But
that is one drawback. I just don't think it's enough of a drawback.
Yeah, I was never like making the difficult decision about abandoning a bus.
No,
like, I'm not going to abandon a bus.
You can't put enough fuel on other cars to power those cars. You have to have a bus.
Exactly. And you can just stay where you are and loot for fuel indefinitely.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, long story short, get yourself some big vehicles.
Now you and I had a disagreement on construction vehicles.
Yeah, I might be willing to yield on that.
Okay.
I always kept at least one or two of them, and the only thing I did with it was ram the shit out of other vehicles.
I can see that.
They're useless for anything else, but they have pretty good...
they're rammers.
And because there's no one on them, there's no top side, there's only like 4 people on them,
mm-hmm.
If you lose the structural integrity battle when you ram someone, you're not out a lot because they're not that great. So I think they have their place. I liked using them. I thought they were good for ramming, but they,
the tires and structural integrity thing, I have a gripe on. And it's not a big one. I understand the mechanic behind it. Okay, you shoot all the tires out on my bus.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not going 60 miles an hour, what happens is the bus stops in real life. you know. In the game, the 50 people on that bus are suddenly dead.
Yep. Yeah.
Lost 6 tires, everybody dies.
Yep.
They can't keep
It's a death
shooting.
sentence.
They can't.
Yeah.
I
know
feel like it
that's
should
a
be-
little bit of
Yeah.
a head scratcher, but when you do it to someone else, it feels all right.
Oh, it's well, fuck those guys.
Yeah. Totally.
No, I can imagine it would have made game. Although, like, the double standard isn't too big a deal. Because, like, when you board, so we'll get to boarding phase here in a second. We're still in, like, fire phase. If you want to continue talking through, I'm sorry. I got us way off
Well,
track.
the other thing with firing is you can't fire out your front twice or your left or right twice. You get two rounds to shoot, but you can only shoot in each direction once.
Right.
And the other thing that I didn't like was if you are shooting, like if you can shoot 2 cars, it seems to randomly choose which one it highlights first. But range really does matter in this game. So you always want to shoot at whatever's closest to you.
Yeah, it doesn't logically pick the car you would want to shoot at. So next through to see if you've got a better choice.
And it's hard to hold in your mind when it jumps from your car to the car you're shooting, because sometimes, you know, there's multiple and it's hard to keep track of which one you really wanted to shoot. So
Right.
use the range number as a guide if you get confused.
Right. And then we talked about shooting out the wheels, but there's also you can shoot at the top or interior, which is shooting at the people of the vehicle, trying to whittle them down.
And that's key for boarding. It doesn't really have much to do with anything else, just boarding, because there's an order of combat where you fight the top side people, then you fight the interior, and then you take over the vehicle once you defeat everyone on the interior.
And this is where I wish I knew if there was a mechanic behind, like, if I shoot... I knew what I was going to say. I just lost it.
Yeah, that happens. You wish there were a mechanic behind...
Shooting the interior topside people...
Do you wish you knew how many guys you were shooting at?
That's some of it, but it was something else. But yeah, I mean, I do wish you knew how many guys you were shooting at. Like, does that, how much of a difference does that make? Oh, I remember. I wish I knew whether you were more likely to hit people versus tires. Like, it might sometimes be worth, like, if I'm shooting at a motorcycle that's got 2 tires and 1 guy, or sometimes 2 guys, which makes the most sense? Should I, shoot out like 1 guy on a motorcycle? Is he easier to hit than the 2 tires? If I knew that mechanic, or if the guys inside were easier to hit, sometimes, yeah. If I'm from a range, it might make more sense to shoot at the people and not worry about the tires just yet.
Right.
I also think if you shoot out 1 tire on a motorcycle, that should be it. You shouldn't need to get both.
Yeah, for real.
Contrary to my other conversation about wheels, motorcycles, you only need 1. And the guy
That makes
dies.
total sense. Yeah.
Because I'm betting he's not wearing leathers and a helmet in his post-apocalyptic biker gang.
No, probably not.
And probably not holding on with 2 hands if he's also shooting an Uzi at your bus.
Right. Talk about David and Goliath. Yeah. Yeah, the topside interior thing is cool. If you I like you, I wish they gave you more information about the car that you're shooting at. The one trick I sometimes used, if it was fortuitous to do so, I would board with like 1 guy, because then they'll fight in the vehicle and you can see how many survivors are left, and then you can like make a better choice about am I going to try to shoot the tires or am I going to shoot the interior?
That was brilliant, by the way. That was game-changing for
Thank
me.
you.
Like, I would send people up and deliberately board with them just to, like, what am I working with here?
Yeah.
And I got a few buses that I wouldn't have taken otherwise, because I'm like, oh, just shoot it, get rid of them. Like, oh, no, there's only like 10 guys left on here. Pull up my flatbed, just start loading people off.
Yep. A bus with no one on it is just a useless
tasty.
vehicle, really.
So let's talk about boarding. We've talked about guns here, because then the final phase is boarding.
Yep.
And in these three phases, it feels very board gamey. It feels like you're playing a board game here. I could see this as a tabletop game and having a ton of fun with it.
Totally. This would be a great tabletop game.
Great tabletop game. When you go to board, it's not a guarantee that they make it.
I love that. And sometimes, and like if you have the right vehicle, you can load so many people onto another vehicle. It's great.
Pull up with a van, or like you said, a flatbed, and just be like, everybody off, go, go, go.
Yep. Dragoon died.
Dragoon died. Dragoon died. Dragoon died. Dragoon made it. All right, buddy.
Yeah.
There are 40 people on the bus. Dragoon died.
You're like, oh, Dragoon died. You're like, oh God, do I stop? What do I do? Armsman died. Oh no.
Yeah, no, it's great to just send him over, though.
Yeah, and the best feeling is taking over a vehicle, because then you get it for the rest of combat.
I thought you kept it outside of combat.
That can save your life. What's that?
I thought you kept it after combat.
You do,
Okay.
but it's not like you get it. You also get it in this combat.
Yes.
And yes, you do keep it for the rest of the game, but there's no like delay or anything. Like you're driving.
No, you got it right now.
Yeah, and that's great when it saves you from something.
Right. What's interesting is the other way isn't true. If they take over your vehicle, everybody dies. So I've kind of cracked up when they like load like 30 people on one of my buses that only has like 5 guys left. I'm like, you just killed 30 of your dudes for like no reason? What?
Right, because the bus crashes if they win. They don't get it.
They don't get it. It's gone now.
Yep.
You do need to think about going back to firing for a second here. And this is one of the few drawbacks of buses in terms of what D&D would call the action economy, where you get 2 shots with a bus and you get 2 shots with a convertible. Now, there's a different amount of guns in each shot, but you still only get 2. So do you want a couple really big, heavy buses that you got to kind of turn broadside to fire out of? Or would you rather fire 16 shots and roll the dice on all of them? More times than not, you just want to have 70 guns fire at one poor little car. But
exactly. Yeah, that's what I want.
That's what I want. But there are moments where the other way is a handy thing to have. That's why I never took just buses.
Right. Those little vehicles can save a turn or a whole combat with just like 4 guns.
Yeah.
It did generally feel like shooting tires is a little overpowered, because it's rare, unless you have a lot of intel about the vehicle, that you would want to do anything else. I think, especially on any car.
I think what would have been maybe too much, I'm just thinking of this just now, but to help add some differentiation between the people in cars, like you can't target the car without at least a commando in your car. Like if you just have escorts in a thing, they're just spraying and praying. They're like, "Rah!" And maybe they'll hit some tires and maybe they won't, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But once you get to commandos, they can be like, target the wheels. Damn it.
Right. Yeah, that would be a good mechanic. Like you're better, because then you would feel more about your troops.
Yeah.
Your better troops.
Again, that's a modernized game thing. That's just I'm sure a space thing. I don't know that they would have considered it back then, but even then, I don't know that I'd add it to the Commodore version of the game, because that's a lot of memory to take up for that. But
yeah. But then that's it. Like, hopefully you win the combat, and if you lost any vehicles, you lose a bunch of supplies, and again, you just spent 30 minutes in combat. So do with that what you will. Like, that's part of the game, though.
Yeah.
And it is possible to scratch your way back to where you were after a bad combat. It's not like all the time it just fucks you, but
Yeah.
it does sometimes just fuck you for no reason if you've had a bad combat.
Yeah. I kind of scooted ahead here to the abstract and quick combats I put in as demonstrations, so we can kind of talk about those a little
Oh,
bit.
great.
One of my other complaints about combat, and it goes back to what we were talking about the armed gun, like not moving people around. And sometimes you're fighting mutants, and same thing. This is a car apocalypse game. When a gunfight starts, half your guys should get in cars and just drive over the other people. I want that tactical combat. Okay, here's abstract.
Yeah. So you can just watch this. Like, again, you don't get anything from, you can't take over vehicles,
Right.
but this is it.
That's it. Combat's done. Did a whole combat. Didn't have to deploy. Didn't have to assign everybody. Now I get to take a bunch of stuff. Don't have enough space for more food. Still got 4 medicines.
Yep.
Fuel. Take that.
Always take fuel.
Apparently not.
Oh, drop fuel. Oh, dropping fuel feels bad. Yeah. So that was the whole 30-minute combat condensed down in about 10 seconds. And if you don't like to do the tactical combat, you can still play this game. It'll go a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another thing. Like, if you wanted to get this game done in a couple hours, just go straight tactical combat, and I'll bet you could crank through it
or
really
abstract,
fast. Yeah. Oh my god,
yeah, totally.
I should try that. I don't know that it'd be as fun because, and I think, like, if I was making this game again, I would have on the main menu, do you want to play a game, or do you just want to have a quick battle with cars? Like, just let me pick, like, a loadout of cars and then have them pick a loadout of cars. Let's just play a car fight. Yeah. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, the combat's good enough that you could do that. Like, that would be a decent experience.
I do, like, I found out after I beat it that if you don't finish this by 2003, you fail.
Yeah.
I think I don't like time limits on my games. Like, I would have liked the ability to go, I don't care about your scientists. I'm king in the post-apocalypse.
Right.
Why would I want to put things back? This is fantastic. All right, quick combat's coming up here.
Yeah, so here you're
going through all the same things.
Your guys, but then now you get to see the tactical decisions you make. So your ram ratio, that's if you want to ram things that are bigger than you. I look this up every time I specified it, and I still don't remember how it works.
Yeah, so I just choose half. And then I chose, like, I reached a point in my games where I'm like, it's always wheels, right? Like, I just want to put all my points in wheels.
Yep. But then you see it rams everything anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a little richer from, like, a storytelling standpoint, but I prefer abstract.
Yeah, I mean, now it's taking my time and I'm not making any tactical decisions.
Mm-hmm.
It's the worst of all worlds. And it's not making good tactical decisions, so...
Right.
Yay?
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't a fan of this.
Yeah.
There you go, you did it.
Yay.
Yeah, I think we've talked about all of this. We never really talked about what the late game is, but at some point someone will say, hey, you got to go to this city and use the password. Mm-hmm. And then you use the password, and then they're like, go find these scientists. And then you go find the scientists.
It's kind of funny. Like, you know, bringing up Auto Duel again, because I think that's the comparison most of our longtime fans are going to want to, like, how is this compared to Auto Duel? You run a bunch of missions, or basically you go from town to town getting in fights, and eventually, after getting in enough fights and enough prestige, someone will approach you with a big mission for the government where you need to get a password and then go to a place and then bring things back to that place, and then you win the game. That is literally a very high level view of both games.
Yes.
And yet
and yet this one is way, way better.
Just had way more fun. Combat never felt pointless.
Mm-hmm.
I never looked at combat and was like, oh, that wasn't fun to do, or they're being really stupid. The AI is obviously Commodore Amiga level AI. I never felt it was terribly dumb.
No, there was one time, and actually I don't know if this is brilliant or stupid, but there was one time where I had a fleet of vehicles and I got it down to one truck, and it just drove to the side of the map in a little like one spot thing between buildings and just like rammed itself into the thing while shooting at me. And I was like, well, actually that's trying to get away or like kill yourself so I don't get the car. That's pretty smart. But also I think like it just didn't know what to do.
I had that happen once too, and I wondered, was it bad AI, or because I couldn't see what was going on, was there like a driver dead at the switch and everybody was topside just along for the ride? Like, I'll never know.
Yeah.
So I just presumed everybody was dead inside and he's just slumped at the wheel driving forward. And people on top are like, oh God, we're going to die.
A building.
Yep.
But even that was like tactically, it was kind of challenging because
how do you get them then?
It's the edge of the map and you have to like kind of drive your guys around in a circle or stop, but they're still shooting at you, so you don't really want to stop.
Oh, I stopped though. I like parked 5 cars in a stop around him and just.
That's the smart way to do it. But like, I think in mine there were a bunch of like crashed out vehicles and stuff.
Yeah,
so
it depends on your layout.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that makes the combat consistently fun, even though you're driving the same cars and kind of going up against similar cars each time. You feel like, okay, well, there's like basically 2 maps. The layout of the crashed cars and how they're snaking their way through them means that every battle you got to think about differently. Mm-hmm. Like, I try to give my buses streets where they can drive straight and just ram anything that's coming at them. But sometimes you don't get that. You're like, okay, well, what's my choice? Or they'll place themselves a street up. It's like, I really wanted my buses to be coming at you, so now how do I get them up there and over? Where, like, when you played Curse of the Azure Bonds or Pool of Radiance, you'd find orcs in a hall, and there would be 2 lines of orcs, and there would be 2 lines of your party, and you walk at each other, and it's the same battle. It's gonna be the same. This is never the same. It's similar, but never the same.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Should we peek in the pit?
Yeah, I was gonna say Pinnacle and Pit.
Peek in the pit.
I'll peek at your pit, baby.
The peak for me was the first time I took over a flatbed truck and drove it around and used it to finish off the enemy. And it, like, I was in a bad state. I took it over and it kind of saved me. And I was like, this is great because I planned how I was going to take that truck. I got my guys where I wanted them. I managed my speed. I executed it perfectly. I took it over and it saved me. And I won the day.
Yep.
The pit was going into combat with, I had like 500 people. I had a rough combat. I did it tactically because I was just starting out. And I won just barely. And then the game just attacked me with mutants, infected me. And 2 turns later, it was game over. And I had wasted all that combat time.
I can see that.
That's the pit.
Yeah. I mean, I can see like you being at such a high point and then just having it all ripped away from you so fast. That's not a great feeling.
No, and it's the randomness that feels bad about it because I didn't do any of that. Like I won a hard combat. Like I should be rewarded, but of course I lost so many cars I couldn't take anything.
Right.
I wasn't able to take over a vehicle. That's probably what I should have done, but
Well, right. Well, and there's one of the things too that like I talked about, if we traded food for salvage, where it's still something you have to spend money on, but not necessarily something you're going to spend every step.
Right.
Like, if you lose that bus, okay, but can I load some salvage out of it? Can I use it to fix my other cars? Is there some redemption
Right.
for what just happened? And I think that would have helped. That would help this game feel a little less painful on a loss of a bus that's holding your 2,000 food.
Right.
And then you get the choice of, do you want to take all your food or all your fuel? Because you can't split it because of our interface.
Right.
So I get that. That's definitely a shitty moment. I don't think those moments happen often, though.
No, they don't. They don't happen all the time. But the fact is that
They can.
they can, and you don't know when. And this is definitely a case of save often. Don't feel bad about save scumming.
No, this is
But-
the 80s.
but-
Save and reload, save and reload.
But again, to do a big long tactical combat or multiple, and then have to lose that is a big loss of your time.
Yeah.
But that's a game.
Yeah.
And the tactical combat's fun, so it's not like the end of the world.
No, but still, I mean, I get it. For me, the pit was, I'll do the pit first. Near the end of the game, it just, something glitched. Something happened, and I wasn't able to load tactical combat anymore. And I don't know if it was like I had hit every bonus and maybe somebody's bonus had gotten too high and it was glitching out the game, or I had too many people, or what happened. But I couldn't, so I had to do abstract for the rest of the game. Thankfully, I was within like an hour of the rest of the game, so
Yeah.
whatever. Still sad, but I'll live. The pinnacle is I won. I beat the game.
Yeah. Yeah, you sent me the end screen, and I love that end screen too.
Yep.
So yeah, congratulations. And you beat it relatively quickly. I was close. I never just like got over that line and got all the scientists back, but I
don't
did
know.
get to the end game.
Yeah, I don't know why you were so close. Like if I were you,
I know,
you probably got an hour and a half left to finish. And
I know it was just personal life stuff.
Yeah.
Nothing, devastating, but I just got really busy. So
that's okay. It's there. You could still do it. Just do abstract.
yeah, I'll probably
combat
go back and abstract my way through the rest of it.
Just so you two can be president. It reminded me of the end of Bad Dudes, where you get like a cheeseburger with Ronnie. Like,
right? Are
really
you a
had
bad
that
enough
kind
dude
of
to
vibe.
become the president?
Yep.
Cheeseburger with Ronnie. Yeah.
And then this hint sheet from SSI. The only other thing I want to talk about is some versions have, like, you can randomly find a plane that will take your team to Nassau Island, which is where the invaders came from, and see how bad they have it, and then take you back. Not every version has it. I don't think the Commodore version has it, but the Amiga supposedly does, and the DOS version does.
Neat.
So that's kind of a cool little story element that they added in later, but it doesn't really do anything. You just kind of
You
get a
get to
little
see
story.
it.
Yeah, and I'd love to know who owns the rights to this, because it needs a tabletop version. I want to play this on a table somewhere with some guys. Like,
That would be so much fun. It would be great.
and I feel like the length of the game is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, the mechanics would wear out if it were longer, and if it were any shorter, it would feel unfulfilling.
Yeah, it's the perfect length, and once you've beaten it, the desire to go back and play it again, you don't feel like it's an overwhelming obstacle because of the things that are set. You feel like, oh, I could get through this even faster.
Right.
And
you
so
can
you
do
won't
better,
feel like
make it easier on yourself.
Yeah, it's going to be very easy for me to try this game again because I know I could do it in less than 5 hours. Just sit down for a day or a couple days, play through a game of Roadwar, and have had a great time. So
I think that's it. I think we
that's
talked
it.
about everything about Roadwar.
I think we've talked about everything about Roadwar. So I'm going to just put it back to here and pause for a second. That's December. We're in December now. We have nothing official planned until the beginning of January because holidays.
Yes.
We might have a surprise coming up in a couple weeks. Pull something out of my sleeve. Starting in January, we will obviously do our look back at 2020. Yay, 2020 is over. I don't think anyone doesn't share that sentiment. So yeah, 2020 is about to be over. We're about to go into 2021, which will mark our 5th anniversary.
Fantastic.
And we'll start our game choices up again after our anniversary episode. And we will start a live play of Nox Archaeist, which is going to go live in about a week.
That is super exciting. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
That's what we've been sitting on with the live.
We've been hoping it was going to come a little sooner, but that is a little optimistic on our part. So here we are, ready to go. We will start that up in January.
Tune in.
Yeah, tune in. And yeah. Anything else before we wave goodbye? All right.
I think that's it.
Well, then goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. See you next time.
Bye.
Big thank you to all of you watching, sharing, liking, subscribing, suggesting games, commenting on our videos, or supporting us on Patreon. We appreciate all of your support and look forward to sharing many more videos with you. Thank you again.